Welcome to the Dare to Differentiate podcast. This is Hani, your host, and here my guest today, Moishe Chanin. Welcome.
Thank you.
It's always difficult to introduce someone. So I ask you if there's anything that you would like to share as an introduction before we start this conversation.
Sure.
Okay.
Thank you, Hani, for having me here. I learned the Sikha about one of the teachings of the Baal Shem Tov that the Barditchever had adopted and had shaped the Barditchever that he lived with all his life. And that is that, like it says in Pirkei Avos, Torah she'ein ima malacha seifa b'teila. So the Baal Shem Tov teaches that what is malacha? Meaning if you're learning Torah and you don't have any work, that's the literal translation, then the Torah is going to be b'teila. So the Baal Shem Tov says that Melacha means his askus in Avos Yisrael, to be involved in Avos Yisrael.
Okay.
And in the Rebbe Sikha, the Rebbe talks about how to have Avos Yisrael. What does it mean to be his askus in Avos Yisrael? So in short,
It means to be involved with Avos Yisrael, but I guess
right.
we don't,
So
we
first
can't
of all,
really
what's
translate it
Avos
that way.
Yisrael?
Yeah.
And what does his askus mean? So Avos Yisrael is from another Mishnah, which is Eizo Chacham Halamid Mikal Adam.
Right.
So the Rebbe is amazing. You know, everybody thinks that the Mishnah is talking about the Chacham. But the Rebbe says, Eizo Chacham Halamid Mikal Adam. That means every Adam has something that he could teach the Chacham. So each one of us has something that we are rich in, that we can give to others and contribute to others.
Yes.
So the sharing of that gift, the sharing of that unique teaching is Avos Yisrael. And his askus in Avos Yisrael means we make it our business.
Right.
And somebody doesn't just sit around with some merchandise in some closet in the attic waiting for somebody to find out that he has merchandise and then come over and buy the merchandise. No, the Rebbe is like, rent a store or get a store that's on a busy street with a big sign, and not only that, sell it, get out there and actually sell it. So I put myself out there, right? And I was like, okay, anybody, I want to give. And I love having conversations.
Right.
It seems to be the most comfortable and natural way for me to share of what I have. And that's when I said, okay, hey, anybody want to have me on a podcast?
Yeah.
So thanks, Hani, for having me. So this is me. You know, I've been working on myself, on my character, and refining myself as an individual so that I can be of a highest possible contribution and service to the people in my life, including my family and friends and the community. And in the process, I've learned a lot.
Yeah.
And what I've learned a lot in the process of growing myself ended up becoming my contribution. So that's a little bit about me.
Wow.
Yeah.
Look at that. So thanks for being here. It's interesting that you bring this idea of Avos Yisrael. And I guess like traditionally, like the story of Avos Yisrael is that the students of Rabbi Akiva didn't respect each other. Like Nahagu Kavod Zelazah. What does it mean that they didn't respect each other? That means that they didn't respect each other's like different viewpoints to the point where they couldn't see it for what it was. Yeah.
Maybe.
Or something.
I think it was
there
also
something.
like, I have my take on it.
Should we go there?
Sure.
Get right to it?
Yeah.
Because there's always like the juxtaposition. So I guess you're talking about like one expression of Avos Yisrael. So maybe it is a good idea to unpack what that looks like versus what Hisaskus and Avos Yisrael looks like. And I think we vacillate between both of those.
Yeah.
And what do both look like?
We could jam on that. I'm not sure. But my idea around the Talmidim of Rabbi Akiva.
The students. Can you just do a quick recap of what happened there for context for our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of said it. So basically, Rabbi Akiva had many students, and how many tens of thousands? I don't remember, but tens of thousands of students. I think it was 24,000.
Yeah, I think so.
And they were all of great. They were all incredible scholars, and they would all learn the same Torah. But when one person would understand the Torah in a way that was so revolutionary for them individually, they would want to share that with the person
Right.
next to them who they love. And because I love you so much, I just want you to have what I have.
What I have. I don't want you to have what you have. I want you to have what I have.
Yeah, because mine is better.
Because this is my truth.
Yeah,
This is
so
my
that was-
experience.
Right. So as a punishment or as a consequence of that, there was like a plague until it stopped, and the day it stopped, I believe, is what we know as Lag BaOmer. So this is a concept which what I want to share with you is just my take on it.
Please.
Okay. And it could be that there's already a source for it, but in my learning, the way I introduce this idea is truth with a small t. Many of us, okay, so let's put it into the context of here, right? So each one of them was seeking the truth and in their learning, and they just want to experience truth, right? When I can't see truth with a small t, then automatically your truth can possibly be a threat to my truth, or your truth and my truth can't live in the same space. If there is a objective truth,
Right.
right? So in the world of objective truths, you have these types of agreements and these types of plagues. But what if there were many truths? And there's this one line that I say it's like a mantra, but it's something that I've repeated to myself many, many times as a way of refining myself as a person. And that is, I respect and acknowledge everyone's experience of the world as it occurs to them. So everybody has their own truth.
Yeah.
And if I could respect, as we said, right, that's obviously Yisrael to that level, to respect and acknowledge that everybody has their experience of the world as it's occurring to them, and mine doesn't need to be a contradiction to yours. It could be different than yours, but it doesn't need to be a contradiction to yours.
And I think it has to be different, because our experiences are different. I kind of see it as like objective truth and subjective truth, and they're both true. Maybe that's what you're saying, big.
Exactly.
Like capital T, lowercase t.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
like the objective truth, and there's like subjective truth that's not true, but because that's the reality of whoever is experiencing it.
right.
And that's valuable.
Yeah, 100%. So if we go a little further to see why this occurrence could have been more complicating, is because both parties, quote unquote, adopted a single truth, which is the Torah, God's truth. So when two parties accept a single truth, that's when all of a sudden there's space for, right? So that's just the next level of obviously Yisrael, to be able to find subjective truths and allow for other truths, even in a place where you both agree to a single truth. Like Shivim Panim LaTorah, like the idea that there's different ways of interpreting the same every verse in Torah. So why is that? Like, why would that be something that I'm working on? I know you didn't ask that, but like it's something that I'm working on because I show up to my work with objective truths, where it's like, I have a diagnosis, like a professional told me that this is my problem and I really have a problem. Don't you dare argue with that.
Okay.
Don't tell me I'm not traumatized. Don't tell me I don't have ADHD. Don't tell me I don't, because this is my truth. This
Scientifically backed.
Yeah, this is
data.
the truth. This is with a big T truth, obviously, because it's backed up with a certificate, with some sort of degree, with some sort of diagnosis. So I just started looking at those things, and I mainly look at these things when it gets in the way of a calling. So if I have a calling and I really believe I'd really love something in my life, and I really believe that it would be good for me, or it would be good for the world, or it'd be good for somebody I love, and then there's some sort of truth that gets into the way and says that I can't have it, or it can't be. So let's say I said I have ADHD, and then somebody says, yeah, I would love to be a teacher. Oh, but you have ADHD. You can't be a teacher. So all of a sudden there's this truth about ADHD that gets in the way of me being a teacher. So turning that truth into a small t is basically saying, what if I don't have? What if I could still be a teacher?
Yeah.
And just basically challenging all these different big T truths that I felt like I had in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's an ongoing thing. Like,
yeah.
what facts, what am I believing about the world, about society, about nature,
Right.
and most importantly, about myself?
Yeah. It's very scary.
It's
very
ego scary.
It's very scary to be in a place where you know that you're questioning all the big T's because you don't know what's on the other side of that exploration.
Yeah.
Because you're asking a question and it's like, if the answer is, of course, it's a big T, then there's really nothing to talk about. But as soon as the conversation's on the table, as soon as you start putting one T on the table, then it's like...
Yeah. It's super scary for my ego.
Yeah. And that's why people say, oh, it's a whole can of worms. You don't want to go there. But like, imagine if you do. So I'm curious if you want to like give one example of like, walk us through like one experience of that. I know it's not linear at all, but
yeah, it's fine. I have this, like, the first example that comes up is just really personal. But
okay. That's the thing about this stuff. It's like, what do you want to share?
Yeah. It's really personal. Let me think about it. I want to see if I could come up with another. I started in my first session with my current coach a couple of years ago. One of the things I said I wanted to work on was to acquire more knowledge. Because my thing was like, if I acquire more knowledge, then I'll be able to be more helpful and useful to the people that I guide.
Be a better service.
Be a better service.
Right.
And he basically turns around and says, what if you don't need to know? And like, I was trapped over there. Like, man, all these years I've been looking at people who have knowledge and being like, they have the power to influence, looking at all these authors and speakers, and, they obviously know a lot. Otherwise, how are they talking? So I have to know a lot. The work for me was really to get to the bottom line of what do I think knowledge is going to compensate for? Because it was coming from like a neediness place, like, oh, I need knowledge in order to, which is all linear, right? So the point is where I'm at, the place where I wanted to go to is more impact, and the space in the middle I thought was knowledge. And what I eventually learned was that I only actually had judgment. And the judgment was that I'm stupid. And I thought that if I only have enough knowledge, I'll be able to compensate for the stupidity, and then I'll be a good qualified person. So at the end of the day, what ended up happening was that I had to really look at myself in the eye and see that I was judging myself as stupid, and forgive myself, because I only took on that idea about myself in a moment of innocence and completely unconscious. And overcome that. And when I say overcome, like, just work through it, just like really forgive myself and slowly remove the idea that I'm stupid. And what ends up becoming my gift instead of knowledge actually becomes wisdom. Like I said, right now I have the wisdom because I have the experience of what it looks like to have a judgment, overcome it, and have a challenge, overcome it, and deliver on impact. So I was at the point of not such high impact. I didn't use knowledge in the middle. I used actually just working through that judgment that I'm stupid. And through working through the judgment that I'm stupid, I ended up on the other side, which was impact. So it ended up my offering to my clients or to people were, instead of it being knowledge, just information, I was offering them an experience or transformation.
Can you walk us through a little bit more of like what that looked like? First of all, identifying like what your beliefs were and how you were able to like work through it. If you want to like throw a tip or two in there. Yeah.
It usually comes up as, I put myself into this position, right? I hired a coach, right? As soon as I hired a coach, all of a sudden the conversation about what do you want in your life is going to come up, and it's going to come up on a continuous basis because I'm committed to this coach, right? So I'm going to have to ask myself that question. And when I ask myself that question, certain things that I don't have in my life come up. Okay. So when they come up, he asks me, or I ask myself, like, what's getting in the way? For example, like being more on social media, like that was something I was scared of. Creating a podcast was something I was afraid of. Writing a song, a certain amount of income, improved relationships with my kids and my wife. So now there's some sort of like pressure, right?
Right.
But the thing is, there's a blockage. There's a wall in between me and that.
The pressure is like almost from the blockage, no?
The pressure is both from the inspiration from one end and the blockage on the other end.
It's like between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I guess so. So in that pressure, first of all, it's helpful to create space, right? So acceptance and forgiveness and all that type of stuff is very helpful in that space, because otherwise it's very hard to operate from a neediness and a pressurized space. So create this space. But ultimately, I become
you say it like, oh, create the space, as if it's just like a small little thing to do.
Yeah.
let's give it a second.
Let's just be clear. Like acceptance itself has been the most important and foremost thing that I worked on myself for many years.
Right.
Years.
No, I believe it. And I also feel like the idea of creating space is like really where the work is.
Yeah. Beautiful. Which also ties into the parsha, you know that.
Okay, we can do that in a second. Well, let's just talk about this because you're just like, oh, just create space, and then like, but it's like, no, to me, from my experience, like that's where the work is, and that's where the magic is.
Yeah, well said.
Thank you.
Yeah, beautiful. Yeah, it is creating that space.
Yeah. So you want to talk about that first? Yeah.
Whatever. Creating the space. Specifically in a moment of awareness, right? So anytime awareness becomes available and there hasn't movement hasn't been made yet, there comes this pressure. Spaciousness is like, dude, you literally just figured that out. It's okay. It's okay to be where you're at. So a lot of times acceptance for me is, and when I say acceptance, I'm talking about I'm accepting that right now I'm aware that I could be better and I'm not. So I'm accepting that I'm not yet better.
So powerful.
Right? So there's two things that happen. There's two types of acceptance. One is I accept that this is the fact. These are the dry facts. Fact is I'm here. Fact is I know I can be better. And fact is I'm not there yet. Can I accept that this is the facts?
And those are all small t. Or not necessarily.
Those are all actually in the moment I could say that's the big T even. This is just the fact that this is reality. This is just the reality. Second level of acceptance is, can I accept myself as somebody who is in this situation? Am I acceptable? Is it acceptable?
Can I accept me? Can they accept me?
Yeah. Can I accept me?
Can the situation accept me?
Yeah. So accept that this is what it is. And can I be accepting of what is?
It's like the gavra and the chefza. Like the...
Yeah. Perfect. Yeah. Being is gavra.
Interesting.
Or maybe it's the bridge in between gavra and chefza. So can I accept that this is just the fact? That's like a huge thing, because within accepting that this is a fact, also, I mean, there's a whole behind the scenes thing, and that is believing that there's a God and he's running the world and he knows that this is what's happening and he doesn't want it to be anything different in this very moment. So can I accept that this is happening, and am I acceptable? Right. Or is this acceptable? Can I choose to accept this because I want to be an accepting person, because I want to be in a state of acceptance? Because when I'm in a state of acceptance, I have so much space and I value space.
Yeah. I think what's fascinating about what you're saying now, what's coming up, is this idea that so much of like our reality and our experience is so deeply connected and tied to our identity. And moving through and dismantling certain like beliefs is like two things. It's like dismantling the belief of the experience or the reality, or the belief and my identity and how I see myself. So sometimes I forget like how deeply tied my identity is with my work. And I also feel like as soon as I start like feeling insecure and like separating that and like separating the knowledge from who I am, it's not good. And I'm curious your thoughts on that.
You're reminding me of Chaya and I went on a date on a random Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to Prospect Park, and while we were going around, we rented bikes, and I dropped my phone on the way, and I realized I dropped it. I went back to try to find it, and I realized I basically learned that somebody found it and ran away and tried to keep it. I tried to communicate, and anyway, after many attempts to try to get it, we were on our way home, and I'd given up. And I felt in that moment, it occurred to me how identified I was with that phone.
Yeah.
So much of that phone was like me. Mm-hmm. And I only say that because I'm seeing how I'm feeling when that phone is not with me. Mm-hmm. I feel so lost, and I feel so violated, and I feel so disconnected or broken or incomplete. So if I'm feeling incomplete when an object that I had in my pocket is no longer in my pocket, to me, that's a sign of how much I've identified with that. So part of me is gone. Part of me is taken away. Part of me is, so just like the phone, there's knowledge,
Yeah.
If I have the knowledge, then it's like, part of me just got reconnected, almost like I'm a book and one of my pages just got sewn, binded back into the book. Okay. Now I'm like, I could breathe out. Learning about and practicing and living a life purposely that's based on the idea that I am infinitely greater than the knowledge I'll ever know. Mm-hmm. There's a me before and after the phones come and go. There's a me before and after the knowledge comes and goes. And the more I can get in touch with that, and when I say get in touch with that, it's because the context that I have, like a picture in my head, like what do I need to get in touch with that? Because I've identified as an outsider. I know I have to work my way in. And the truth is deep inside, and I have to work my way in. Mm-hmm. So I'm over there. Talk about identity. I'm identified as the guy on the outside that needs to.
On the outside of yourself, or on the outside of your
myself,
community?
On the outside of myself.
Okay. And what does that mean?
When I say I need to dig deep inside, who's the I that's digging? So that means in that moment, I identified as the person who's on the outside, who's trying to dig and make his way in. So thus goes, this is just what comes to mind when you share the idea of having knowledge and identifying with it. Yeah, something that's separate from me and identifying with it, whether I have it or I don't have it.
Yeah, and I think just seeing and experiencing how deeply we identify with the things in our lives and how they're like so intertwined with our personal work. And so I think that's what's really interesting, like how dismantling your beliefs, dismantling, truth, like what's objective truth, what's subjective truth, that's all like very deeply connected to identity. So it's just interesting that as you were speaking, it was just making me realize how everything is so deeply tied with how we see ourselves and how we see our relationships and the things we have, and obviously money and work and art. And you mentioned writing, music, like it's all so, and part of the work is like separating from that, but also like finding new ways to identify. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's
taking ownership.
Yeah. You're just bringing up a few thoughts. And that is, there are so many different leverage points for change.
Yeah.
And the three most accessible ones are thought, speech, and action. Mm-hmm. I can do something different, just practice, or I can speak differently and I can think differently. There's different leverage points, of change. What I found is it's interesting because
Thought, speech, and action, those are like the levushim. So
Yeah.
there's like one. Is that where you're going?
What's interesting is those are the tools
Yeah.
for change. Yeah. But out of all the different levels of which I use speech and thought, speech, and action as a tool to change myself, my identity is the highest leverage point.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because it's my highest leverage point. Because if I could change who I am, then all of a sudden, all these different things that I thought I couldn't do because of who I am become possible.
And it becomes irrelevant. Like it's so many things are not even a problem anymore.
Because I changed who I am. The question is, first of all, how do I change who I am? Mm-hmm. So this is what I wanted to get to.
Okay.
In order to even believe the idea that I could change who I am, I have to believe that I'm somebody who could change who I am. Mm-hmm. Which is ultimately a creator. Otherwise, this is who I am.
Right.
That's it. I can't change myself. I can't change who I am. This is who I am. So you may ask, I don't know, you're not asking, but how do I change who I am? Well, let's first look at when I say who I am, where do I look to this? If I close my eyes or if I open my eyes, where do I look? Where am I looking for the information that I'm going to relate to you? Most of the time, I'm going to relate to the past up until this point. Mm-hmm. I'm going to talk about the fact that I'm a son, that I'm a brother, that I'm a friend, that I'm a husband, that I'm,
Your cousin.
That I'm a cousin, that, and I'm just going to go through all the things and I'm just going to look at my past and define it. What if I did it a different way? What if I said to myself, oh man, I have this calling or this desire to write a song or to write a book or to be more successful financially. Like I just really want to. Then I can ask myself, who would I need to be or who do I know would be able to write a song?
Interesting.
Who do I know would be able to write I could think of one person who knows how to write a song. Okay, great. What are their character traits? Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, they're a songwriter. Second of all, they're insightful. Third of all, they're deep. Fourth, whatever. I'll just go through these all different things. And then I could say, I am that. Mm-hmm. I am that person. Who do I need to be in order to write a song? Oh, I need to be a songwriter. Okay, great. How would you know you became a songwriter? Aside from writing a song? Well, songwriters generally journal. Songwriters generally, some songwriters won't listen to any music for like a couple of months. Songwriters will be okay writing bad songs because you write 25 songs and then one that's good, that's the one you publish. Right. Really good songwriters are not scared of making mistakes. Okay, great. So if those are the character traits, how can I begin developing some of those character traits now? So, what's the Rebbe doing with Hakhel? Mm-hmm. Right? And again, this is just my perspective. First, it's just like, okay, once every 8 years, once every 7 years, on the 8th year, the king gets up, it's on Sukkot, and he reads the thing. Right? It's just a thing. So it's just the Rebbe turned it into something that we start doing more, right? Which is start creating Hakhel events. Mm-hmm. Start learning about Hakhel. Boom, boom, boom. Until the Rebbe gets to the point, which I don't know which point the Rebbe got to it in, but he's like, there's this thing called a Hakhel Yid. There's a Hakhel Yid. There's an actual person who's called a Hakhel Yid. Mm-hmm. So basically, he's like showing us, do you want to experience the world in a revolutionary way? In a way where nobody else can really experience the world? Mm-hmm. Would you like this pair of glasses that when you look through this pair of glasses, you start seeing a world of which God is revealed and everything is good? Well, guess what? There are things you could do to create a certain person, and that person sees things that way. Mm-hmm. And this is how you do those things. You create Hakhel events. You start talking about Hakhel. You do it all the time. And you just do it and do it and do it. And eventually you're going to start seeing the world through the eyes of the Hakhel Yid.
Yeah.
So we can proactively create identities which allow us to experience the world in a certain way and to fulfill what we believe our purpose might be.
I'm curious if you like had any like personal experiences this year where you felt that like becoming a Hakhel Yid, like you felt that.
Totally.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like to share?
One specific thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
My brothers and I, we Isaac and Fala specifically, like we were all into the Hakhel thing. Like over Sukkot, we would talk about it. We learned about it. One of the things we learned was that the Rebbe says, if you approach somebody who's been to a Hakhel event and you ask him if he was influenced by the Hakhel event and he says that he wasn't, you should know that that's not true. Right? So it's like so radical.
Yeah.
I just want to explain to you like what I hear when I hear that.
Yeah.
Objectively, you could say, no, that's like the Rebbe's like actually saying something that Chas v'Shalom that is not true.
Right.
Because I was not affected. Like there's certain people that are not affected by it.
That's my truth.
Yeah, that's my truth. Yeah. The Rebbe is offering us a truth. And he's being a stand for it. When he says it's not true, he's being a stand for. He is writing a new reality that doesn't yet exist. And he's offering us to write that truth with him when we learn it. To literally, because if collectively enough people start writing the same truth that the Rebbe is offering to us, we will actually transform the reality that we're living in.
Absolutely.
Even for the people who are not sitting there and writing the stories with us. So we were learning all about this, and we learned this teaching, and we ended up going to 770, and we did the whole Simchas Torah. And after we did Hakafis, we came back to my parents' sukkah. Actually, it wasn't the sukkah now. Then they closed the roof anyway. So we were sitting there for bringing, and somebody came there, and I asked him, "No, Moishe." His name is Moishe. Moishe, how was the Hakhel event that you went to in 770? Because he was at Hakafis in 770. He says it was great. Were you affected by it? He's like, no, not really. I said, that's not true. He's like, whatever. Okay, fine. And I paused for a little bit. I saw like, okay, I sensed that I sensed, which may not be accurate, that he didn't like that.
Yeah.
He didn't like what I just said. So I made a mental note about that. And we just continued on with the night. We had a good time. I left. I went home. A week or two later, I sent him a message. I said, Moishe, I've been thinking about that conversation that we had, and I'd like to sit down and explain to you why I said that. And he said, sure, let's do that. So we ended up having a 2-hour conversation where I broke it down for him. And I explained to him why I said that, where was the Rebbe coming from, which is ultimately a lot of the things that I just shared with you. You know, the idea of being a stand for something that doesn't yet exist. Being committed to a truth that you don't see with your eyes or hear with your ears yet.
Yeah. And knowing that by standing in that truth, that is how it comes into reality.
Yeah. But I'm also listening to your language, right? And you're saying standing in that truth. As if that truth is there and I'm standing in it. No, you're actually literally creating it.
Creating it by standing in it, or no?
Your stand is the creation of it.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Right. Okay. I'm just imagining this place. Yeah. There's this pool or this space called truth, and you're standing in it as if the truth is not you and you're standing in it.
No, I'm saying it more as like identifying with it.
Yes.
And
identifying with it is different. It's probably being the stand for it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's not just semantics. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So that's an example of like living Hakhel, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it was very moving, my Hakhel experience. I had a few, but 770, Simchas Torah was...
Yeah, that was amazing.
Next level. Really.
Yeah. Part of Hakhel is also celebrating the kids.
Yeah.
A big part of Hakhel, when it comes to the kids, we were talking earlier about being, right? The fathers, the men need to be there so that they can, increasing their Shemayim. The women need to be there also. Okay. Why do the children need to be there? Because it says that, we have to Hakhel, we have to gather all the men, the women, the children, right? And Gercha Shevi Sharecha. So the men, we know why. The women, we know why. But why do the kids have to be there? And the really, really small little kids. The really small little kids need to be there. The answer that's given is that they will give the parents the opportunity of bringing the kids. So it's really just about the parents. But this question is still there, and that is, but what about the kids?
Right.
So from there we learn, at least this is my learning and my understanding, is that there's a level of impact that happens just by being there.
Absolutely. And it's almost more profound than like if you know what's going on. I mean, it's not that any of us know what's happening, but...
Right. Yeah, so...
Yeah.
Hakhel reality has just been fun. It's been meaningful.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been great.
Yeah.
So Hakhel is just one example of a truth or an identity that technically didn't exist. And the Rebbe offered it to us as a gift, as a teaching, as a way of fulfilling his mission. And we created this identity called this Hakhel Yid, which it talks about in the Sichos. There's this thing called a Hakhel Yid. It's a person. You look at him in the street, you see he's a Hakhel Yid.
Oh,
it's
actually,
an identity. Yeah.
It's interesting because one of the things that I learned this year specifically was Hakhel to me means just community. And and what does community mean? Community means that we're all together and we're all supporting each other in our individual experiences and journeys. So we're all there and we're all experiencing it differently and we're all supporting each other in whatever little tease or whatever is going on. And I really felt that. And I felt that during Sukkot for sure. And so was Sarah, but in my personal life, something that I struggled with, and I know a lot of people can relate to it, is this idea of doing everything on my own and not really being able to rely on other people. And so one of the things that I'm trying to practice is leaning on that support. So I hosted a birthday party this week, and one of the big things was ask oh, can I bring something? Yes, you can bring something. Here's what you can bring. And that was a really big deal for me. Yes, you can bring this. And then, well, what if that person is not going to bring it on time? And you know what? They didn't. Some of the people, and that's okay. I don't have to overcompensate and ask somebody else to bring it or me go run and buy it or whatever. Can I lean into this support that's around me? I don't have to carry this all on my own. I can share the experience, share the responsibility, and just lean and feel supported by my community. So that's my family, that's my friends, and there's also other ways that I can be supported by just somebody who, let's say I'm walking down the street and I just say hello, and we can that's a support, right? That's just just a smile, or even just eye contact. Can I be supported by that? By just a random stranger on the subway, just smiling at me, and I could smile at them, and then obviously there are many levels of relationships beyond that, but that has been really profound for me in my experiencing of Hakhel. So
beautiful.
Yeah. And a lot of the themes that you were sharing of just validating, because you're experiencing something, but you don't necessarily have the sources for it or whatever. And so it's, yeah, there's, like you said, there are different points at where change happens. Different access points. That's what it was.
Yeah. Or leverage points.
Leverage points.
Yeah.
I'm curious why you call it a leverage point.
I call it a leverage point because when I am looking to implement any sort of change in my life, I need a leverage point. So, there's different levels. Okay, so when I say different levels, I'm thinking about coaching, right? So
when I'm saying leverage, is that because to me, when you said leverage, I'm thinking access. But I think you're saying something else.
Yeah, leverage point, meaning if I move something here, how much of an impact is it going to have? If I move it on level 1. So let's say, for example, if I'm trying to move a building, right? If I only work on the top floor, if I only work on the top, then I'm only affecting the top. But if I go, the lower I go and move over there, the more of the structure I move. So what if I could go all the way down to the foundation and then make a shift there, then the entire building is going to be. So that's what I mean by leverage point. Deeper into my being.
Yeah. Okay,
so the deepest place into my being that I'm aware of outside of my simple just being, my existence itself, is my identities. So I can't change the fact that I exist, but I could begin change outside of that, which is who am I existing as? So does that answer your question?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm happy to ask because I was seeing it more of like it is an access point, but it's more about where you're accessing it.
Yeah.
At what level?
Yeah. On what level I'm accessing it in relation to how impactful it's going to be.
Right. Got it.
So people come, I'll start a conversation with somebody and they'll say, I want to change, something, they'll just, I don't know, I want to change my job. I want to stop feeling so anxious, or I want, and so then we could talk about things like, oh, you can meditate, you could do CBT, you could do, I don't know, whatever it is, there's different things that you can do. So that's a leverage point in behavior.
Yeah.
So I just offer to go deeper. What if there's a way that we can go deep enough that not only will you change how, like, whether you're feeling anxious or not, or change your job, but you'll actually change yourself as a person and how that will affect in all the other areas of your life of that you want change. Yeah.
I guess that kind of like to the point of like different relationships that you have, like, is it on the level of just like making eye contact with somebody on the street? Is it the level of like gossiping with your friend? Is it a level of having just general psychological conversations, or is it something where you're sharing something personal with someone? And those are all like different levels, I guess, leverage points of like where you're going to connect.
Beautiful. Which ties into what you were saying about creating space.
Right. Interesting. Tell
me more.
Creating
space. The more I put into creating space. So if I'm just looking at I just make eye contact to somebody on the subway, the space wasn't really created. So there's not going to be that much impact. But what if I paid that person $1,000 to be there at that time to look at me in that way? It's going to have a much bigger impact because I'm going to, even before I get on the train, I'm going to be thinking about it. While I'm sitting in the train waiting, I'm going to think about it. And then finally, when the moment comes, make eye contact. Yeah. So the space, meaning the investment that I make, the intention that I create before I even get into it, is what raises the leverage that the moment will actually have on my life.
Interesting. It's a little ironic because like so much of the work is like being present in the moment, but it takes so much work before that moment to be present in that moment.
Yeah. So you need to be present with your preparing to be present.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's really fascinating. And I think that also ties into like doing work for yourself in order to be able to impact other people, or just doing work like for now, for this moment.
So now what you're mentioning is bringing, there are two sikhs that I've been living with. Okay. So one of them was the one I was mentioning earlier, and that is the Avos Yisrael.
What, can you just tell us what the source for that is?
It's Chelik Aleph. I think it's Mishpatim. Okay. I'm not sure. It starts off with mentioning there are three teachings that the Frierdiker Rebbe taught us about. There are three teachings of the Baal Shem Tov that affected the Barditchever. And one of those three were this. That's how the Sikha starts. The second sikha is about miklat. And the Rebbe spends like maybe 5 lines, maybe 1 paragraph, which I think is actually in parentheses, about the actual Ari Miklat. And the rest of the entire Sikha is talking about the signage that were on the way to the Miklat. And what does it mean, a sign? And what does it mean to be a sign? So part of being
intentional, like creating intentional space.
My intention is to go on shlichus, and it was a big part of the point. The way the Rebbe brought out the point was about shlichus, like where boys go out and they go and try to do outreach, and they're so excited about it, and then they come back and they have nothing to report, so they think they did nothing. And the Rebbe's point is that when you create the intention to create an impact, whether you like it or not, it's going to make an impact. Now, sometimes to be able to see it is a gift.
Yeah.
But when you set an intention, you're going to create an impact. So, on one hand, create a goal, create a destination. On the other hand, who are you in the journey? How do you change on the journey when you have a goal? Who are you today when you make that goal? What does it bring out of you by taking a string from today and tying it to somewhere in the future? You know, I just think in imagery, right? So I take a string onto my heart and I tie it to something in the future. It's going to bring some things out of me today, out of my heart today. And only because I tied my heart to something in the future does it bring it out of me today. So, you know, there's a few different like little phrases that I've come up with that helps me with it. One's a little bit dark, but I'm just going to say it.
You love a little dark.
Yeah. What am I willing to die trying to accomplish? And trying to accomplish will be my success. What am I willing? What is so important to me that if I died trying to accomplish it, I would feel fulfilled.
Right. Like you will die on that hill, or no?
I don't know. I'm not thinking about whether I'm going to die or not.
No, as in like you're willing to die on that hill.
I'm willing to die on the hill, knowing that this is what I was trying to do. Yes.
Okay.
So what I'm highlighting is that there's a certain person that I become in the process of trying to achieve something. And that person is my goal. So we're put into this world to do certain things, and we're put into this world to be a certain person. And we're highlighting being that person. And again, it just wraps into the other, into the other, because when I'm being that person, I can do certain things. And there are certain things that I can do so that I can refine my character, so that I can be that person. So they kind of feed into each other, but the neshama way, more than the guf way, the godly way, as opposed to the ego way, is to focus more on the character than in the destination.
Right.
And I use the destination as a way of bringing forth and refining the character now.
So the destination is really just like a tool.
Yeah.
That's all it is.
But I have to really actually believe it, that's where I'm heading. Mashpina, I say tehi tzaddik, but you're just going to be a beinani. Right. But you have to really commit yourself and promise that you're going to be a tzaddik. So when you're committing to be a tzaddik, you really actually got to mean it.
Right.
And then be a beinani. Because the person who's always trying to be a tzaddik is going to be a beinani. That's the person you're meant to be in this lifetime.
I don't.
So that celebrates the journey. It celebrates the person who's on the journey.
I think talk about identity. I think a big part of like mashpia masay tzaddik, right? Like where you're promising to be a tzaddik. If I think about it, and obviously it brings up all kinds of things of when I first learned it and what my identity was then when I was a student. I don't know how old I was. I can probably figure out exactly what year, but it's not relevant. Like my identity as a student and as a child, hearing that, and then not identifying with that meaning. So it's like I push back on that whole idea because I still identify because that idea of aiming to be a tzaddik, I don't identify with in the way that I understood it then. So can I reassociate, recalibrate, and understand in this way? That's just what's coming up for me right now.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's what the Rebbe was also offering in that Mishnah, right? Eizu chacham aleinu mikol adam. It's like, oh, you have to be a chacham. You have to learn from every single person. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, there's no way I'm doing that.
Right.
So maybe I should just not learn Mishnayos altogether.
Right.
And then the Rebbe's like, no, slow down. You're the Adam.
Mm-hmm. And you have so much wisdom.
And you have a gift that nobody else has.
Yeah.
You're a Beinoni, and that's exactly what God wants.
Right. And just loving that part of, I think it's so radical, especially, I mean, it's interesting because you mentioned your coach a few times, and a lot of what coaching is, like culturally, is like really hustling for the bag, right? Like, but that's obviously not your experience of it.
It's a beautiful marriage between the two.
Right. With whatever.
Have a goal.
Right.
And actually, we're working on achieving that.
Right.
And then it's almost like, you write something on a whiteboard and then you erase it and there's like a teeny bit left of it.
Mm-hmm.
Write the goal, erase it, and write who you need to be now in order to get there. Mm-hmm. And work on being that person.
Right.
And keep doing that process over and over.
And just going along with the marker and knowing that like it can be erased in a minute, and like it's just true for however many moments it's true for. And then there's something else.
There was a time when I was, let's say, I'm just making a joke. I don't know this, there was a time, I'm sure, when I was like 8 years old and I wanted to be a fireman, and that was my truth. And that was really, really my goal. So from moment to moment, my goals are in proportion to my awareness at the time.
Yes. Just fascinating how like awareness, identity, experience, like it's all intertwined. But I do want to take like a moment to, first of all, like acknowledge the fact that it's all it's very brave to even like start talking about this kind of stuff, because it's so much easier just to what you know, and like just kind of go with it and stay in that lane and just keep going, because
comfort in the familiar, for sure.
Yeah, and it worked. Maybe it works, and I think the only reason why like we are exploring other options is because it doesn't work anymore. So
right.
It's like,
and it's important. You mentioned it earlier. I just want to reiterate it. It's like we utilize certain tools that today may seem useless or even harmful, but when we began using it, that was exactly what we needed at the time. Mm-hmm. So be wary of the judgment that always arises with new awareness.
Right. The judgment of the past, or judgment of like older identities, or
how could I have done that? Away. Oh my gosh.
Literally. There's a really good trend on TikTok about that. I remember one, and then you just like turn your head in embarrassment.
Right.
And maybe not to judge the embarrassment either. Like that's there. It's valid. Mm-hmm. I'm really curious, and I've been wanting to ask you this. I don't even remember how many years ago it was that you shared your story about
addiction recovery.
Addiction recovery. How many years ago was it?
I'm going to say 5.
Okay. So about something like that. Let's say about 5 years ago, you shared, I guess you went public with your story about recovering from addiction. And obviously there was a very specific story that you shared. And at that point. And I think for many people who ever heard that story, like that's the story that's frozen in everyone's minds because that's what you shared and that's what they know about you. And that's their reality of your reality at the time. And for sure, that's not your reality anymore because you're a different person now because 5 years have passed. And so I'm just so curious, first of all, how that sharing has like, and that identity, because I guess now you're identified as a different kind of person socially because of that and how that impacted your experience.
Just getting up created a new identity. And since then I'm just going to throw at least 50. I've developed at least 50 identities over. Since then, yeah.
Right. And do you want to share a little bit about that experience?
The experience of reinventing myself?
I don't know, because it's just like you share one story, but obviously like it has evolved and changed so much. I'm curious if any parts of that story that you shared change, like you see differently now, and how that impacted your journey, because obviously sobriety is never ending journey. And I don't know, I'm just really curious about that.
I want to make sure I understand your question.
Yeah.
How has reinventing myself impacted the sharing of my story, being that my story is frozen in time?
Yeah. Is there something that you would like to be seen differently as, or are you good with how you're seen in that story?
That's a good question. I like that question.
Okay.
That's fun. Because on one hand, I would love to be seen as more than just somebody who's recovered from alcoholism and addiction, even though that's freaking amazing.
And it's something to be proud of.
Yeah. And thousands and thousands of people have been affected. I'm talking about like that I know of.
That you know of, and you don't know of a lot more.
That have positively been affected by it. And I'm more than just an addict, right?
Right.
You know, to the extent that like when I'm in a 12-step fellowship still. And when I identify myself and say, my name is Moishe Dov and I am an alcoholic or an addict, right? I intentionally, quote unquote, the space I'm creating, right? My intention is actually introducing two different people.
Okay.
I'm introducing me and my part. I'm introducing me as
and
Moishe
the part
Dov.
that
That's
had
me.
the addiction.
This is me. I am a soul. I'm Moishe Dov. And I have a part of me who's an addict. And I'm introducing both of us. So it's like, imagine two people walk into a room. One of them says, I'm Moishe Dov, and the second one says, I'm an addict. So when I say I'm Moishe Dov and I'm an addict, I'm introducing two separate people.
And is there, like, what else do you want the world to know about you?
Oh, what I want the world to know about me. First of all, that I'm a coach.
Okay.
And I help people.
Reach out.
Yeah, reach out. Like, there's this town that there was a girl that was sick, and this is very dark, right? She was sick and she ended up dying because she didn't know that there was this guy who was a doctor that was just moved in and was too shy to let everybody know that he was a doctor. So part of my mission is to let people know, guys, I'm a coach, and you could see me as the coach that if you look on Wikipedia, there's a coach. I'm probably not that. There's a lot of that I am. I just haven't come up with a better word than coach. But yeah, I'd love for people to know that, they could really experience the world in an incredible way, and they could accomplish all their dreams, and they could create new dreams. They could reinvent themselves. And I've learned, and I continue to learn how to help people do that. I would love for people to know that about me.
Right.
Yeah. First of all, because I want to have an income, I don't want to do that, but also because, and more outspokenly, because I know the benefits that people can achieve from that. And I want people to know that, because that's my contribution, and I want people to get that.
And the reason why I'm asking is because this conversation has been so much around identity. I'm curious if there's something more like of who you are as a person that you wish people knew, not like professionally. And obviously, like, it's so intertwined because of what a passion project, I guess, your work is.
Can you say again what you mean?
Yeah.
What you just said about passion project.
So I asked you what you want people to know about you.
Yeah.
And then you said that you want people to know that you're a coach, which is obviously your work, which is very deeply connected to who you are.
Yes.
But it's not enough for me. I feel like there's something else that you want the world to know about you. And so I'm going to ask again.
Yeah, no problem. A lot of, different things come up for me. It's hard to pick.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, I'll just do it in the order that it's coming up for me. Like, first of all, I'm a work in progress. Like, I get anxious. I get depressed. I get into arguments with my wife. I have a hard time with my kids sometimes. I have low self-esteem sometimes. And on the other hand, I'm growing every single day.
Yeah.
And then I ask myself, like, why do I want people to know that?
Right.
I want people to know that because they can have that too.
Wow. I just want to honor the fact that you, first of all, shared that. So thank you.
You're welcome.
And I also feel like you were talking about, like, way before, about these people who share wisdom, share knowledge. And a lot of, like, what I'm trying to do with this podcast is, like, to actually share, to give people an opportunity to really share who they are, share what they really think. And it's really, really, really hard. And not in like a dark way, just like in a way of, like, it's not what we're used to. We're used to, like, everything, like, this is what I do for work. This is what I do for fun. This is, like, this is my house. This is the kind of house that I live in. This is my tax bracket, like, all of that. But as we, like, peel all of that away, we need to be able to have examples for other ways that we can identify ourselves. So thank you for being an example.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
And I'm curious if there's any other closing thoughts.
I don't know why this is coming to me, but I'm just going to share it, okay? They're generally, I call them the 3 loves. One is destructive love. I'm in pain and I find an unhealthy behavior, and it works, whether it be some sort of, a drug or a behavior or whatever it may be. And technically I'm loving myself because I'm soothing my own pain. When I stop that and I begin growing and I tell myself that, oh, I'm just an addict, and that's okay, because I become aware that what I'm doing is a problem. So stopping to judge myself using a diagnosis is the second love. I call that trauma love. Oh, this is just my diagnosis. It's not my fault.
Right.
This is just who I am. Or I'm not a bad person. I'm just a sick person. I have this sickness called addiction, or I have this illness called anxiety, or whatever it may be. The third one I call godly love. And that is one where I'm willing to let go of my diagnosis, be in the space of nothingness, sitting and loving all the judgments that arise, and then once all the noise is gone, begin writing my own story. There's such a fear that people have, that I've had. I'll just speak for myself. There's such a huge fear. And the fear is that I'm going to be confronted with all that judgment, right? Because in certain areas of my life, like, man, the amount of times that I've asked myself, what the heck is wrong with me? And feeling so ashamed of that there's something wrong with me.
It's fascinating that the biggest fear is judgment. I really relate to that.
Yeah.
But it's really fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and we could talk about that too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's another conversation. The fear of judgment is basically being witnessed as something that you're not, as somebody that you're not. Mm-hmm. Right? Anyway, so the judgments that I live with, that I find comfort and solace, I think that's the right word, in a diagnosis. That judgment, that I'm afraid to have that judgment again. Because if what if, when somebody asks me, what if you don't have anxiety? What if you're actually smart? Mm-hmm. Then, number one, I'm afraid that I'm going to be confronted by those judgments. Mm-hmm. Number two, I'm afraid of this empty space. This empty space, to my understanding, is very scary for the ego. Because the ego needs to latch itself onto something concrete in order for it to exist.
It's to identify with itself with something.
Yeah. So, if I'm not a bagel, are you saying that I'm the whole of a bagel? Mm-hmm. I'm just like, what's going to be left? Who's going to be left when that identity is taken away? And that nothingness is terrifying. Yeah. That nothingness is terrifying, and the access point to all possibility. Mm-hmm. It's a blank sheet.
Mm-hmm. It's like the space in between the rungs of the ladder.
I guess so.
Can be.
Yeah, or the blank canvas.
Yeah. Actually, I don't know. I don't know if I feel that way. No, I take it back. Because it's much more, it's more like when you talk about like blank as in like ayin, like yesh me ayin, like creation from absolute nothingness.
Right. So yesh is terrified from ayin.
Right. For a good reason.
Right. Of course, because he's going to disappear. But the thing is that if you're willing to sit and stay a little bit, even for a split second in ayin, there's a cold mamadaka. There's peace, and we're not meant to stay there.
Interesting.
We're not meant to stay there. Ratzeh and shuv, right? We're not meant to stay in the blank slate. The whole thing is to like
swim through it,
to constantly clear off the page and write the one that serves most now. So the last message is like there's 3 levels of love. Mm-hmm. And if you're in the level of trauma love, it's okay to be there. Mm-hmm. It's okay to be in any stage that you're in. It's okay to be there. You don't need, nobody needs coaching, and nobody needs therapy, and nobody needs to not need therapy. But if it serves to be in any one of those stages and it's fulfilling your purpose right now, then it's fine. If there is a truth right now that serves you, it's okay to have it. Even if you're aware that there's another one that could be better.
And use it.
Yeah, and utilize it and gain from it.
Yeah.
And if there comes a point in time where, I'm careful to say when you're ready, because we're never ready for anything. But it's okay to be in the stage that you're at. Mm-hmm. It's okay to have a diagnosis if it offers you freedom. Yeah, it's a bit of a philosophical message that I say at the end.
No, I think it's a great message. It's like, I kind of see it as like you're exactly where you need to be because you're here.
Yeah.
Like the fact that you're here is proof that you're supposed to be here.
Yeah. Well, it took a lot of training and work on yourself to come up with that.
Thank you.
And believe it. Yeah.
No, but it's like, it's not even like, it's not anything to like, that is objective truth. Like you're here.
No, you're believing that God runs the world and there's a force and whatever is good because it is.
I'm not even saying that. I'm not even saying it may be bad, but that's where you are.
Right.
Like you may hate it. You may feel insecure about it. You may like wish you were somewhere else, but you're here because you're supposed to be here.
Supposed to.
And if you weren't supposed to be here, then you wouldn't be here.
Right.
That's more like, as in like, you're not here. As in the fact that you're using something and it feels like a crutch or feels like there's a reason for a crutch. If you have a broken leg, you need to be on crutches.
Mm-hmm.
So like, no shade to crutches.
Right.
Thank you.
That's it.
You know, medication, support, whatever. Like
Whatever it is, yeah.
it's great. Yeah. Well, thank you
That's
for
it. It's okay to be wherever you are. It's perfectly okay, and there's always going to be the next level of growth for you.
Yeah.
And it's still perfectly okay to be just where you are.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of resistance to that for me.
Mm-hmm.
So let's keep repeating it. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on my show. And I hope that all of our listeners gained at least one thing from this. If you've listened this long, thank you. Come back again. See us again soon. And stay fabulous. Thank you.
Thank you, Chani.
Yeah.